Blessings. Dr. Dennis L. Waters here. We're going to listen to a bit of music and then we're going to get started. This is the Restore Executive Life and Leadership Coaching and Consulting broadcast. And today we're going to be talking about a number of things. We're going to begin talking about meditation and then this whole aspect of this E equals MC squared. And that is the theory of relativity. And we're going to talk about for a little bit just changing how that formula can work. And the question I want to ask you, is it possible that E over C equals M? That's a manipulation of the particular formula of relativity. But what it basically says is that energy, when divided by the speed of light, creates math. Remember, the statement says that it is done unto you as you believe. Is it possible that something can basically be created out of the dreams that an individual has, out of that person's imagination? Remember, Neville Goddard says that imagining creates reality. Imagining creates reality. And Jesus the Christ said, it is done unto you as you believe. And so, for me, that is the same thing as the idea that a person can actually create something out of nothing. Something out of nothing. It is done unto you as you believe. Our imagination creates reality. Oh, here's the music. We want you to give some thought to that. Is it possible that something can be created out of nothing? It is done unto you as you believe. Imagination creates reality. So that's what we want to talk about. That's what we want to talk about, not just talk about, but also think about. It is amazing that science is beginning to actually say the same thing that a lot of people have been talking about for years. As I understand it, I think I caught it on the news a few days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, that the military actually came forth. Navy pilots had previously, during this past year, or a couple years ago perhaps, had indicated that they had seen unidentified flying objects, UFOs, that were in the skies, even above the skies of the United States of America. And they had been able to photograph these particular flying objects, if you will. And they photographed them flying, and I just saw a news report today, I believe it was, that they were flying between what they call Mark 5 and Mark 20, which is, I believe, if I understood correctly, it was 5 times to 20 times faster than the speed of sound. 5 to 25 times faster than the speed of sound. And as I listened to the individual, I believe it was MSNBC, it could have been CNN, but they were saying that That speed is far more than what we are able to do as the United States, or is far more than what they're telling us that we're able to do as far as the United States. And that Russia had previously done something like this, but they may have shut their program down. And you'll know that this is something that they've been talking about for a period of time is science fiction. And then I remember when I was growing up, there was this movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still, and there was this man, I think, Keanu Reeves, if I'm saying his name correctly, no disrespect intended, for this man played in The Matrix 1 and 2. And so I have great respect for him. I've seen those movies are a part of the Matrix Resurrection movie. And I have great respect for him and his skills when it comes to playing in those movies. I've seen some others as well that he was in. But that A Day There Stood Still, he actually played in a remix of that particular movie as well, or a remake of that particular movie as well. So, according to that particular movie, as I understood it, my particular understanding of what took place is that the people of Earth, we are a immature species, a sentient species, but an immature species of those who inhabit the galaxies. Galaxies, we are not the only galaxies, we know that, of course. And we are immature. And the rest of the galaxies are waiting for us to grow up, to grow past our just smallness. And so they're waiting for us to grow up. And that's what we call becoming one's authentic self, or this evolutionary journey. That's what's taking place with us. And so that's why it's of interest to me when it comes to helping individuals to grow. The amazing thing about part of this is the aspect is that we're not looking at individuals from the standpoint of them being sick, or them being broken, or even them being individuals who are just simply sinners, or something is wrong with them in that regard. The idea is not that something is wrong with an individual. What we're talking about is that a person is at a particular stage of evolutionary growth. They are growing. And what's most important is that an individual sees him or herself as someone who wants to go to the next level of development, of growth. That's what's most important. But if a person is satisfied to remain at the level that they are at, that is no problem. That's their decision. That's their decision. But the individual who is desirous of getting is just, I guess, to a certain degree. There are times that I've seen individuals, they desire a new car. A person may desire a new dress, whatever it may be. Sometimes I have looked at it and I've seen individuals say desire a new pair of shoes, a new dress, or whatever it may be. And I remember growing up when I didn't have really soles in the shoes that I had. I had to put cardboard in those shoes in order to go to school, that kind of thing. But I'm amazed when I look at some of my relatives, my grandchildren in particular, they've got rows of shoes. We used to sing about, I got shoes, you got shoes, all God's children got shoes when I get to heaven. And we thought that you had to die to go to heaven. And therefore, it meant when I die, I'm going to put on my shoes and going to walk all over God's heaven, that kind of thing. You may not remember that. I may be a little bit older than you are, but can you imagine you had to die to get a good pair of shoes? That was amazing. But now people live in heaven, and shoes are the qualifier, or what you get when you get to heaven. And so when I look at this particular thing in this day, it has the same kind of motivation, if you will, to get a new car, a new pair of shoes, or whatever it may be, a new house, that kind of thing. And so I'm motivated by the aspect of what does it mean to grow up? What does it mean to take the next level of evolutionary growth, to be a better person, all of those kinds of things. And, you know, we definitely need it, in my estimation, to get along better with one another. That would be a major, major step. There are people who are looking for and trying to calculate the return of Jesus the Christ. And I think when I look at that particular idea as I read it in the Bible, the same thing is involved there. I have in mind that Jesus is waiting for us to grow up, or the Christ is waiting for it to be formed within us. The Apostle Paul says, let us have the mind of Christ. We are to have the mind of Christ. And he said this whole thing that we have, he did an affirmative statement, we have the mind of Christ. And so that's the thing when it comes there. Or you can say we have the Buddha mind, or that we have the mind of the Allah or the Atman. You find, I don't mean any disrespect in regard to that if I'm saying that incorrectly, but the idea is to become ourselves fully, not only as individuals, but a collective humanity. So that's what I'm talking about in regard to this. This is what I'm talking about. So it's not a matter of a religion. It's not a matter of a denomination within a particular religious belief system. This is an overall collective of humanity, all of us growing up. That's the aspect that I'm talking about here in regard to this. And so that we, while we may, as I say, go up different sides of the pyramid or different sides of the mountain, we're all seeking to get to the top of the mountain of ego growth, ego development, if you will, what I'm calling getting to the top. That's becoming one's authentic self. And so when I look at that, there are also scientific articles that talk about the in what was called the Psychological Science journal, I believe it is. It's written a bit ago. And this particular item was written by a man who was, him and others, written by a man called Seligman, Seligman. And him and a few others, they were writing this particular article. When I look at it, was written in 2013. It says navigating into the future or driven by the past. Consider that, navigating into the future or driven by the past. And what he's talking about, he uses the word here called prospection. Prospection. Propectation. Prospection. The representation of possible futures. Is a unique, ubiquitous feature of the human mind. Ubiquitous means it's something that is everywhere. The human mind is constantly looking toward the future. Every human mind is looking toward the future. So it's not just a matter of us wanting something for the future. Even if we already have, so to speak, one of those, we want a better one, a bigger one, like a car, or like a house, or like a pair of shoes or clothes, or whatever it may be, or something that we want to eat. We not only want it when it's in its natural state, so to speak. We might want oatmeal cookie, but then we want something that's in addition to that particular cookie, or some taste of ice cream. We don't just stay with vanilla all the time. We might want something else with that vanilla. Or if it's a milkshake, we want a different kind. All of that is what he's saying there. It is a ubiquitous feature of the human mind. And Seligman helped in the development of positive psychology, a psychology that's looking forward to the future as opposed to be driven by the past. Driven by the past may do with there's something in the past that I didn't do and I feel so sorry for it and I want to work that out or whatever it may be. But looking forward to the future is like a team that is seeking to win the Super Bowl or seeking to win the World Series. They're moving forward in regard to what they're doing so that they can win the big game. And they're excited about what's ahead of them. Or they want to win the Oscar, or they want to win the Country Music Award of the Year, whatever it may be. They want to win the Billboard Awards, or whatever it may be, or Wilmington, or whatever. The golf tournament, the Masters, all of those things. And so they train and train and train and train and train and work and work and work, so that they can win the greatest salesman of the year award. That's what we're doing in regard to that. And so prospection is the word, the representation of possible futures. What if I'm number one? Not number two, number one. I'm going forward to do that. You can call becoming your authentic self the same thing as becoming your Christ self or any of the top. Any of those. the best version of oneself. That's what we're talking about. And some people may have in mind that, there's nothing that I want to be, do, or have. That's fine. That's fine. That's your choice. That's your choice. Now, in regard to that, so we say that that's a what, that's a desire, and everything like that. Um, and so we're working with that particular item. That's a what idea. But then there comes the aspect of how, and you may work with the why, would I want to do that? But again, the desire is what we're working with there. The what, you figure out what it is that you want in life. And then for me, the aspect is taking 100% responsibility for it. So we're talking to adults, individuals who hold themselves 100% responsible for getting whatever it is that they desire. They make the decision for themselves, and they're the ones responsible for bringing it to pass. You don't get to go home and cry to mom and daddy or to a husband or wife or to anybody else and to say, I didn't make it. It's one's responsibility. The government is not responsible for helping you to grow and to mature as a human being. The church is not responsible for helping you to grow and to mature as a human being. Nobody can do this for you but you. And so, if you want to understand a book that deals with that kind of thing, the book is called As a Man Thinketh. And again, you can actually email us at real-coach.com, admin@real-coach.com. We'll send you a copy, or you can go online. There's a PDF. I'm sure it's at Amazon as well, and you can get that particular book. You can probably download it as a Kindle book. There's no question about that, and you can have it even read to you. So if you have difficulty actually reading, there may be all kinds of things involved with that, and you can get something to read. I have natural reader myself, and I put it on about 6 times the normal reading speed so I can read really, really quickly through the item. And then I follow along in the reading of it with PDF or some other kind of way that it goes. So it reads for me really quick. Yeah, again, that idea comes right out of the matrix as well. Super learning is what it's called. And so, but that book, As a Man Thinketh, takes a verse right out of the Bible and applies it to every area, pretty much every area of one's life, so that one is able to actually understand that I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible. So this entire idea is what we're talking about in regard to that. And so when I look at that particular item, when I look at that, this idea of the idea of creating something out of nothing, something out of nothing. And I mentioned the idea of this idea of having a desire, a desire. Now, I'm going to read something that's out of my particular item that I created out of nothing and just meditation and everything like that. And I entitled it The 8 A's of Transformation, Transmutation, Meditation. So it's 8 A's. 8 A's is my signature formula that I developed when I was a student at Howard University. And then I developed this item. It's a meditation that we're talking about. And I call it 8 Days of Transformation. Transformation is a real experience, a real experience. And we're working with the 8 A's, the first A being awareness. And the first A being awareness. A person becomes aware. They wake up, so to speak, and say, I want something different from what I have. Remember, I just read that particular article. And I can supply you with that article as well, admin@real-coach.com. Be glad to give you a copy of it. And I mentioned this particular item that I've done is called the 8 A's of Transformation, Transmutation, Meditation. And so it's meant to be both a teaching tool and a tool for growth. And I said this book is a combination and culmination of considerations and concentration of ideas from a number of inspired and inspiring authors, as well as personal inspiration over the years. The first picture has a picture of the ladder, the 8 A's as a ladder, if you will, or steps going up. And I'll send you the picture again. It's admin@real-coach.com. I'll send you the entire item. There are the picture of the symbols of the 8 A's as a step ladder. The first picture has to do with the idea of the cartoon that it used to be a show come on Pinky and the Brain. The second picture has to do with the idea of a tractor beam from the original Star Trek series, television series. It has to do with the idea of possible futures, which I just spoke about, read from the article. Which any child who watches Marvel Comic Universe, MCU, heroes like Doctor Strange, who in the movie Endgame calculated the number of possible futures for a situation the Avengers were then facing. He then asked, how many were there? He replied that there were 14,605. He was then asked of that number, how many of them would the Avengers and himself survive? He replied there were only one. The rays from the brain, more like it was rays from the brain that I have, which is a picture of our registered trademark. The rays from the brain, more like the mind, have the intent to encourage you to ascribe to do in the peace of silence, in the peace of meditation and affirmation, what Dr. Strange did. Focus on the possible futures that assure you will survive and thrive as you grow as an individual. The third picture is of my double thumbs on my right hand. They are double thumbs of Dennis L. Waters Sr. In the Marvel Universe, I would love to be Doctor Strange or Black Panther. They are doubles. In the biblical world, I imagine I would be prophet, priest, and king like David. Here, my intent is to share with you what a gift to me, or better, a set of gifts to me over time. It is not really one document, it is a combination of documents, ideas found in documents. The ideas of people whom I have personally, some of them and others, I have read their words. Some are alive in this domain, others have passed on to another level of living, as we would say, to another realm. So this is a practical manual. Set aside time both to study the manual and practice and do the work of the manual. This includes the manual and other accompanying booklets and pamphlets that go along with it. The intent is to do a seminar with live presentations and presenters and instruct and train you on the material. Now, to convey to you the thoughts, emotions, and energy of this material like a live presentation. Nothing may be a strong word or a particular appropriate word, that the only thing that we can do is to have an energetic presence with you, like what we're doing here in regard to this. This is actually the first time I'm doing this in regard to what I'm doing right now. And it's because that spirit has just really prompted me to do this particular item. And what I'm trying to do is just give you an idea of what I'm saying in regard to this. The day will come when we'll do the live presentations and that kind of thing, and we'll meet, we'll talk. So we look forward to that day. Now, plan for a period of at least 21 days if you're listening and practicing twice a day. If you are listening, practice only once a day, then it may be that you need to do this for 42 days. If you really want to lengthen it out, you can make it 7 weeks of 7 days, which would be 49 days. Keep a journal of your journey, your inner thoughts and thinking journey. Before sharing the 8 days of transmutation, ascended transcendency meditation, I would like to share with you a few chapters from books which have been a great blessing to many. The writer's name is Thomas Throwood. That's what I'm trying to get to. It is called the Dore Lectures on Mental Science. Now, you can get this book. I can send you a copy of it, by the way, if you like, admin at real-coach.com. The Dore Lectures on Mental Science. You can also go to Gutenberg.org and look it up, and you can download it and then actually put it in a format, a PDF, or whatever you are able to do, and then print it out if you like. I've had this e-text since 2000, the early 2000. It was originally obtained by me as a text from Project Gutenberg and an e-text, and I also contribute to that and to Wikipedia and other things like that. That's what I do. It was called by them from the public domain and distribution of such books in the early 1970s. So this is a plug for them. I don't get paid for that. As you read, pay particular attention to the discussion about desire, the alpha and omega, and the arcade. which is the reason for the inclusion in these chapters. So it's not just me talking in regard to this. I'm trying to give you some points of reference so that you can see that I'm a student of study as well. People talk about, well, I was inspired. Yes, I am inspired. I've had some direct connection with spirit. There's no question about that as far as I'm concerned. However, I think that most individuals, like the prophet Jesus, he says, it is written, as your prophets have said, it is written. And he did that. He was a student of what had already come. To ask God just simply to throw all of that he's done in the past away and just speak directly to you without you doing a great deal of research. I don't think that's respectful of the spirit, as far as I'm concerned. You can have your own understandings of that as well. So the item that I have worked with is the writings of Dr. Uh, Thomas Thurwood. Thomas Thurwood. And so I want to read for you this time is the item is called the Dore, as I'm saying it, Dore, Lectures on Mental Science. And this chapter is called Desire as the Motive Power. There are certain Oriental schools of thought, together with various Western offshoots from them, which are entirely founded on the principle of annihilating all desire. Reach that point at which you have no wish for anything and you will find yourself free, is the sum and substance of their teaching. And in support of this, they put forward a great deal of very specious argument, which is all the more likely to entangle the unwary, because it contains a recognition of many of the profoundest truths of nature. Because it contains a recognition of some of the profoundest truths of nature. In other words, an individual can listen and they'll point to these particular teachings, point to nature and ask you, says, well, there are certain things in nature that look like that something has no desire, and says you should be like that particular something or that particular animal or that particular plant or whatever it may be. You are not a thing. You're not an animal. You are a human being, in my estimation, interpretation of what is here. But again, that's one of the reasons for getting this particular item, and you can read it and give your own interpretation to it. But we must bear in mind that it is possible to have a very deep knowledge, continuing to read. But we must bear in mind that it's possible to have a very deep knowledge of psychological facts and at the same time vitiate the results of our knowledge by an entirely wrong assumption in regard to the law which binds these facts together in the universal system. And the injurious results of misapprehension upon such a vital question are so radical and far reaching that we cannot too forcibly urge the necessity of clear understanding the true nature of the point at issue. In other words, get clear about what is being said. Get clear about that. And that's my encouragement to you as well. Stripped of all accessories and embellishments, the question resolves itself to this. This is what he wants answered, and I too. Which shall we choose for our portion, life or death? That's what's on the line here, life or death. Which do you want? There can be no accommodation between the two, and whichever we select as our guiding principle must produce results of a kind proper to itself. So you make the decision. Do you want life or do you want death? What's your desire, life or death? The whole of this momentous question turns on the place that we assign to desire in our system of thought. It is the tree of life in the midst of the garden of the soul. Or is it the upas tree creating a wilderness of death all around? This is the issue on which we have to form a judgment. And this judgment must color all our conception of life and determine the entire range of our possibilities. Let us then try to picture to ourselves the ideal proposed by the systems to which I have alluded. A man who has succeeded in entirely annihilating all desire. To him, all things must be alike. The good and the evil must be as one. For nothing has any longer the power to raise any desire in him or in her. He or she has no longer any feeling which shall prompt him to say or her to say, "This is good. Therefore I choose it. That is evil. Therefore I reject it." For all choice implies a perception of something more desirable in what is chosen than in what is rejected, and consequently, the existence of that feeling of desire which has been entirely eliminated from the ideal we are contemplating. Then, if the perception of all that makes one thing preferable to another has been obliterated, there can be no motive for any sort of action whatsoever. Endue a being who has thus extinguished his faculty of desire with the power to create a universe, and he has no motive for employing it. Endue him with all knowledge, and it will be useless to him. For since desire has no place in him, he is without any purpose for which to turn his knowledge to account. And with love, enduing with love, he cannot endue him, for that is desire in its supreme degree. But if all this is excluded, what is left to the man? Nothing, except the mere outward form. If he has actually obtained his ideal, he has practically ceased to be. Nothing can, by any means, interest him, for there is nothing to attract or repel in one thing more than in another. He must be dead alike to all feeling and to all motive of action, for both feeling and action imply the preference for one condition rather than another, and where desire is utterly extinguished, no such preference can exist. So his point, as he goes through this particular item, is that if you have no desire, then you can't desire life or death, beauty or ugliness, if you will. Nothing is there. You can't have a desire one way or the other, right or wrong, or whatever it may be. And so he's working with the aspect that this whole thing of this whole thing of desire, and we have 4 Ds when we work with individuals. We ask them to be very clear about these Ds. The 4 Ds are desire. The first one is desire. You wake up to desire. You wake up to it. The whole aspect is desire first. And as one person said, desire is the sire. The sire. And sire means seed. It's the seed. It's the initial idea. It's the archetypal idea. It is that vision. It is that awareness. The first one that comes. That spark that brings something into mind. That comes some kind of way. It is that seed idea. That this is who I am. That identity. This is who I am. It comes there into the mind in some kind of way. Not that, but this comes into the mind. So it begins with the seed. When this takes place, this desire in the kingdom of conscious individuals, the affinities exhibit themselves as mental action, but the principle of selection prevails without exception throughout the universe. In the conscious mind, this attraction toward its affinity becomes desire. Desire to create some condition or thing better than that now existing. Our want of knowledge may cause us to make mistakes as to what this better thing really is. And so, in seeking to carry out our desire, we may give it wrong direction. But the fault is not in the desire itself, but in our mistaken notion of it, that it requires for satisfaction. And so this whole idea that we're working with, this whole idea, we may go in the wrong direction, but we still have this desire. We may do the wrong thing, but we still have this desire. Law of attraction at once asserts itself and produces the better condition. The dream of which first gave direction to our thoughts. Thus, it is eternally true that desire is a cause of all feeling and all action. In other words, all life. The whole livingness of life consists in receiving or in radiating forth the vibration produced by this law of attraction. Thomas Thorpe wrote that at the early part of the 20th century, the early 1900s. It seemed new in the late 20th century. It seemed new in the late or the early 21st century when what was called The Secret came out. But he had written it years before. I had not read it before The Secret came out. If you know what The Secret is, the DVDs and all that kind of stuff. And maybe you had not read it until I just mentioned it here. But that's because we were still asleep, if you want to call it that. But you can wake up now if you have a desire. I'm going to end this particular one and then come back and do another. Think about it. What's your desire? Admin at real-coach, real, REL-COACH.com. Email, let's have a conversation. Do you have a desire? That's the question. Imagining creates reality.